If you believe the news, President Trump's tariff calamity caused Stellantis to shut down its plants and fire almost 1,000 people. But the truth is, Stellantis isn't shutting down 2 of its plants because of President Trump's tariffs. They're shutting plants down simply because the vehicles that they make in those plants are not selling. This whole blame the tariffs narrative is just a smokescreen to cover up the flopping Charger Daytona, slumping Jeep sales, high prices, and flat out bad planning by their fired CEO. And unlike Stellantis blaming President Trump, what if I told you that Ford and GM are actually doing something positive about it, and they're making prices lower and hiring more employees? The headline that Stellantis wants you to believe is that Trump's 25% tariffs on Canadian and Mexican auto imports are the reason why they paused production in Windsor and the Toluca auto plants. But more than 40,000 friends and the 65% of you guys who keep watching me but have not subscribed yet, here's the thing. Mopar insiders reported back in February of this year that Windsor is going to shut down anyway to retool for the 2026 Dodge Charger Daytona updates, including solid-state battery trays and also allowing those vehicles to have the 6-pack engines. I have this documentation right here that Windsor was going to shut down for 2 weeks anyway in the beginning of May, and the only thing Stellantis did was basically move their planned shutdown up by a few weeks. Now, it's already been reported as well that Dodge was going to speed up making the 6-pack Charger, the Hurricane inline 6 cars, at Windsor because testing was going so well on those cars. But this shutdown was planned long before tariffs were official. Now, the real story to me is these cars that are halting production are not selling and are not popular. Stellantis halted production on the Jeep Compass, the Wagoneer S, the Chrysler Pacifica, and the Dodge Charger. Now, I'm gonna say this very straight and I'm gonna say this very real. The Dodge Charger Daytona EV is a massive flop. No one likes the car other than a handful of people, no matter what any journalist, any advertisement, or any video try to tell you otherwise. The Dodge Charger Daytona EV is a flop and it is slow. Dealers still have 2024 sitting on the lots unsold, and then they got 2025s that's in production now, piled up in lots as well, unsold. If they would continue to make 2026s on their original schedule, they will have 3 generations of the same car sitting there piling up, collecting dust within 4 months. That's how bad it is. 2024s for that Charger Daytona started in January this year. 2025 started around February this year. And it was about to end production in the next few weeks on the 2026 version of the car that people still was not buying. Customers are not interested in an $80,000 EV with a fake engine soundbar that can get decimated by $60,000 cars. Sales are so bad for the Charger Daytona, they only average 24 sales a day. And they got 2,400 dealers in the US and Canada combined. That's less than 1% of sales a day for a dealer to sell one of these cars. That is bad. With these numbers, if you take it out for an entire year, Dodge can't even sell 9,000 units in an entire year. And Ford, for example, they sold 11,000 Mach-E's in just a single quarter. Sales are so bad that the Mach-E is outselling Charger Daytona almost 5-1. I'm gonna repeat that again. The Ford Mustang Mach-E that even Ford people don't like is outselling the Charger Daytona that no one in Dodge likes almost 5-1. Just being real here with the numbers. Meanwhile, on the other hand, the Jeep Compass has not even cracked the top 10 best-selling compact SUVs this year, last year, and even the year before. It was already getting planned to get retooled anyway for a new generation because sales are horrible. The Chrysler Pacifica, the leading minivan in the segment, lost double-digit sales from the year before. And the brand new Wagoneer S EV, it only sold 2,500 units, barely a little bit more than the Charger Daytona that's also a flop. That's an average for the Wagoneer S of 28 cars a day compared to the Charger Daytona. Yikes. This is not a tariff fallout why these vehicles are being halted. This is a result of building vehicles that your customers did not want to buy in the first place, and then trying to blame others for when your CEO did not listen to the customer base, alienating everyone because he wanted a $25 million bonus in his contract. The only thing positive Stellantis has done in the last 2 years since the last call era was to officially fire their CEO, who was a joke.
Ram's a really good example of that. If we had that safety blanket of buying credits, we would still be building and selling the ancient iron block Hemi V8 that everybody loves. Because we wouldn't have done that if it wasn't for those regulations. So it's a long way to say, yes, it's super tough. But the CEO, he burned our boats, and we're forced to make the tough calls to make sure that we're on a trajectory towards the long-term compliance.
But Antonio Filoso is starting to sound like a chip off the old block, trying to blame President Trump for Stellantis slumping sales and plant closures when we knew one of them was going to close anyway. And I guess he's going to try to blame Ram Trucks losing 16% sales in a year because of tariffs. Stellantis has already been laying off employees for years to replace them with cheaper labor. This is something that's not new. Everyone knows that y'all been doing this. But here's what makes this Stellantis nonsense even worse. Other automakers are actually stepping up and adjusting to tariffs. Ford, for example, just launched a nationwide employee discount program for all customers, giving buyers access to pricing typically reserved for only employees, friends, and family until this summer. That's how you stimulate sales under pressure, especially when the Mustang is having its worst sale years ever. And I don't seem to recall with Stellantis having its worst year ever in sales, especially double-digit losses. I don't recall them going nationwide giving everyone employee discounts to try to stimulate sales. Just saying. And GM, they just announced they're going to increase production of the Silverado in Indiana, shifting more jobs back to the US, and also adding a couple hundred workers. And they're going to start leaning into more domestic production to dodge tariffs, pun intended. And if anything, the tariffs just proved the point and exposed Stellantis' weak foundation of how they make money. They rely heavily on taking advantage of paying Canadian workers less money, especially since they're going to worry about paying them healthcare costs and also exploiting cheap Mexican labor to build a lot of their vehicles like the Wagoneer S, the Compass, the Recon, and the Ram HD trucks, and then sell those cheaply produced vehicles back to Americans at higher premium prices. And then also as well, over the last few years, they fired thousands of North American workers, replaced them with cheap labor or cheap engineers from other countries, and then they take that extra money and buy back their own stock so they can inflate their stock prices. They built all the full electric vehicles in Mexico and Canada, and they were still way too expensive. They basically gave us an $80,000 soundbar with wheels that can barely beat cars around its own price range. They're trying to tell us that a EV soundbar Charger was a real muscle car. If the Charger Daytona or the Wagoneer S was actually selling like hotcakes, do you think they would shut down the lines or blame someone else? There is no way in the world they would do that. Tariff or not, they would figure out how to make it work. But Stellantis has two flops launched at the same time, the Charger Daytona and the Wagoneer S, and now they're using tariffs as an excuse of why they're going to shut production down. Now just imagine if Ram actually released the Ram Rev that Tim Knisis, thank goodness, had the common sense to delay for at least 2 years. Could you imagine Stellantis overseeing 3 flops at the exact same time? I don't think they would actually survive if that was actually the case. Oh, and one more thing, don't forget how these EVs are priced. The Charger Daytona and the Wagoneer S share the exact same platform. They share the same batteries, and they also share the same electric motors. So they use mostly the same parts. One built in Canada, the other built in Mexico, yet both of them are priced sky high, considering one of them is built with $3 an hour labor. If you're using cheap labor, where is the price break? Because those EVs are more expensive than EVs that actually was built and assembled in America. That is not a tariff problem. That is a greed problem. So let me know what you guys think. Do you believe Stellantis is blaming tariffs to cover up for the bad sales? Would you take an $80,000 for a soundbar with wheels over a real V8 Hemi Charger? Should Ford and GM get credit for responding smartly to tariffs? And will we ever see Stellantis move Hemi production back to the United States? Let me know down in the comments. And while you're here, you can check out this video right here. Oh no, it's gonna ask you on this side. Check out this video right here. proving that the Hemi is already in production in Mexico, not in Dundee, not in the United States. You can watch that video right here. And until the next time, I'm out.